universities now following Harvard and the woke path of other Ivy League schools? We are going to find out. We are joined by Gloria Giorno, author of Outcast, and her son Stevie as they share his highly disturbing story about how the radical left at Christian Belmont University tried to destroy him as a young conservative. We will also learn if the flu shot and animal products will be the new avenues to inject Americans with gene therapy, since the CDC has noted that only 7% of Americans are now getting injected with COVID boosters. And according to a recent survey administered by the Annenberg Public Policy Center with the University of Pennsylvania, Americans are growing increasingly wary, with the number of those viewing the shots unsafe this year higher than last year. Pfizer and Moderna have lost $2 billion respectively and are scrambling to stop the bleeding. Matthew Dark from the Matthew Dark Show and Roots Medical Clinic joins us today to share his thoughts about how this, along with alarming limited liability information for Big Pharma. It's Friday, November 10th. I'm Miriam Shaw, host of the Moms on a Mission podcast, filling in for Kristi, Leigh, and this is The Counter Narrative. Dr. Anthony Fauci has been lit up by social media again, but this time with exposing the fact that he ran a lab in Montana experimenting with the coronavirus strain 1 year before the pandemic. The Western Journal reports that National Institutes of Health lab in Montana was conducting experiments with bats that focused on the spread of the virus 2 years before the world had ever heard of it. The report on the experiment noted that existing research suggests that a substantial portion of the SARS-like viruses circulating in bats cannot infect humans directly. But Fauci continues to scoff at the lab leak theory. Imagine that. In other U.S. news, homeschooling has become the fastest type of education in America. CBN News reports that it is now rivaling public and private education. A Washington survey revealed that there are now 1.9 million to 2.7 million homeschooled children in the United States, which is close to a 51% increase over the past 6 school years. Family advocate and actor Kirk Cameron told CBN last year that he believes more parents are wanting to homeschool because they want to see more closely what their children are being taught. Additionally, he explains that the substituting of our nation's Judeo-Christian values with teaching the progressive agenda of gender ideology and critical race theory has caused parents to say no more. He concludes that maybe the best part of home education is that God actually gets to stay in the classroom. And speaking of the classroom, let's talk about the transgender shooter last spring who murdered 3 adults and 3 9-year-old children at the Covenant School, which is a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee. According to the Gateway pundit, podcaster Steven Crowder has now obtained the first 3 pages of the leaked, disturbing manifesto of Audrey Hale. She referred to her plan as Death Day. The document is filled with chilling, malicious intent, with a detailed timeline which contains Hale's thoughts leading up to this horrific event. Her anger seemed particularly focused on kids she perceived to be affluent, with statements referencing children, quote, going to fancy private schools with those fancy khakis and sports backpacks with their daddy's Mustangs and convertibles, end quote. Hale's embittered view of the lack of societal equity can be seen as she wrote, quote, want to kill all you little crackers, bunch of little faggots with your white privileges, end quote. Jesse Waters shares why we need to take a deeper look into the motive of this horrific shooting. Let's watch.
Last spring, a transgender shooter stormed into a Christian elementary school in Nashville and murdered 3 children and 3 adults. Why? Well, the mass shooter was transgender, so the media never investigated motive. The media actually apologized to the dead mass shooter. The New York Times said, I'm sorry, mass shooter, for identifying you as a she when you prefer he. Yeah, the Times apologized for misgendering a mass murderer, but hasn't apologized to Israel for accusing them of bombing a hospital. The White House was worse. After the mass shooting, Binder sent her condolences to the trans community.
Our hearts go out to the trans community as they are under attack right now.
That's right. Trans shooter murders 6 people. Thoughts and prayers for the trans community. Hamas slaughters 1,000 Jews. Time to fight Islamophobia. So how about that motive? Authorities recovered 20 notebooks, 5 laptops, and a suicide note from the killer's car and home. Yeah, the transgender shooter wrote a manifesto. I always thought the left wanted to get to the root causes. Nope. The FBI and the Nashville establishment refused to release the transgender manifesto. But today, 3 pages of the manifesto were leaked. And now we know why it was censored. The trans killer wrote about white privilege.
Jesse exposes the fact that since our schools have been injected with white privilege, equity, and CRT propaganda from Marxist ideology for years, we are now seeing the results of this indoctrination. He concludes that it is time to scrutinize the horrific effects and determine if violence actually being fueled instead of fought. The damaging effects of this propaganda was sadly experienced firsthand by our guest today, Stevie and Gloria Giorno. Stevie's mom, Gloria, authored a book called Outcast, How the Radical Left Tried to Destroy a Young Conservative, sharing the harrowing tale of the vicious and life-threatening verbal attacks made to Stevie at conservative Christian Belmont University after Stevie simply made an Instagram post of a picture of himself in front of the White House July 4th, 2020, with a caption that he was proud to be an American. Welcome, Stevie and Gloria, to the Counter Narrative.
Thank you so much for having us.
So tell us, why did you choose to attend Belmont University, Stevie?
Well, when my family, we fortunately escaped Chicago in 2014 and we moved to Williamson County in Tennessee, and I attended a great high school down in Franklin. And after those 4 years, I wanted to stay in Nashville, stay by my family, and continue working in Nashville in politics. And I thought that Belmont University was what they said it was, which was a small private Christian university that had conservative views and values. And unfortunately, we were very, very misled, and we were wrong in assuming that Belmont University was different than every other college and university that has been overtaken by the radical left.
Well, did either of you see this radical left ideology prior to 2020?
No, it's interesting because when I ran for student body president in January of 2020, I was endorsed by the college Republicans, the college Democrats, Turning Point USA, and many other groups around campus, because it was not and it should never be a political job to do what is best for students. Keeping student fees low and making sure that all students are properly heard from and represented on campus should not be a partisan issue. But unfortunately, the left has made it a partisan issue, especially with what I went through at Belmont.
Well, what exactly did your Instagram post say, Stevie?
It was a picture of myself that my mom took of me in front of the White House, and the caption was, "Proud to be an American, celebrating the sacrifice of those that gave their all so that we may enjoy the freedoms and liberties our forefathers intended on this day in 1776. I'm very proud to be an American. My grandparents escaped communism in Yugoslavia. My mother lived in communist Yugoslavia for some time. And so I'm truly grateful to be from this country, and especially with Thanksgiving coming up very soon, we've got to remind people why it is so great to live in this country. I don't see anyone going to Canada or North Korea or China, and we've got to remind people it's because we're a capitalist country, we're a constitutional republic country, and there's no other country on earth that ever has or will do the great things that we in America have done.
Well, and I think with this woke ideology, it's just filled with lies. And you can see that because people are flooding into our country and our southern border. So that in and of itself tells you people from around the world want capitalism. They want meritocracy. They don't want this woke ideology where it's governed by this equitable force, if you will, trying to make everything equal. And so I think the proof is in the pudding, and people would not be flocking to our country in droves and millions of people and families if it weren't something great. It's the great experiment. And there's a reason why people want to come here.
That's absolutely right. I agree. And we need to encourage more young people who are being misled on social media, whether it's by the Democrat Party or the Black Lives Matter organization, which I refused to endorse in 2020, which at the end of the day really caused all the issues, was because I refused to endorse them because they're anti-American, they're anti-Christian, and they're anti-police. And without those three things, we would never have the country that we have.
So can you all tell the audience and myself, what was the reaction to your post? It was a July 4th, you were probably sitting back enjoying the holiday, if you will, and then you made this post. What was the reaction?
Well, I remember posting it during dinner with my family, and then a few minutes later I went to a friend's house to enjoy the 4th of July festivities for the evening, for fireworks and all that. And I remember my parents calling me about an hour later saying, "Have you checked your Instagram?" No, at the time I had Instagram notifications off, and so I checked, and I saw hundreds of negative comments telling me, go kill yourself, you're racist, you're awful, you're this, you're that. And at first I thought, people were just upset. I couldn't understand it. And to this day, I still do not understand why they were so angry at what I had posted. And then the very next day, we woke to a change.org petition that was claiming I was celebrating a covertly racist holiday. And it was a petition with the sole intention of removing me as student body president at Belmont University because I said I was a proud American and that I refused to endorse BLM.
Well, I have to say, Gloria, I can't even imagine how this made you feel as a mom. I have a 17-year-old son, Luke, and I can't imagine if he were in a university and this happened to him, how I would feel. How did this make you feel?
Well, my husband and I were shocked at first. I mean, we couldn't understand how the 4th of July had suddenly become a racist holiday. I mean, Stevie was accused on the change.org petition of celebrating a covertly racist holiday. It's not a racist holiday. It's the 4th of July. We've been celebrating it. And what he depicted is exactly what Americans celebrate. And we should be celebrating our freedoms. However, we were caught up in a year full of COVID and BLM and rioting and Antifa that I think that everyone lost sight of what holidays are. And it was after the initial shock wore off, I thought about it, and it reminded me of when I lived in communist Yugoslavia. I was in first grade, and I lived in Zagreb, and I was fortunate enough to go to a U.S. Embassy school. And every day when I walked to school, I had a backpack with me that had now this is 1972. It had 1,000 US dollars in it. And I carried it with me everywhere I went. And I knew that if there was a civil war that broke out, at the age of 6, I knew how to get out of the country. I knew which cab to get into. I knew exactly how to get to the border of Italy where my aunt would meet me, and my parents would come when they were able. And I was 6 years old. So what I was seeing was paralleling my life, what Stevie was going through. He was silenced at Belmont University. Just like when I lived in communist Yugoslavia, I knew not to speak out against communism or Josip Broz Tito, who was the dictator at the time. And we had policemen on the streets everywhere, but that was just to, keep everybody quiet. So my son went through the same thing. So the parallels I see of what goes on at college campuses, and yes, Belmont is a conservative Christian university, in quotes, I use that, but it is. And it's exactly the same thing that I saw. My son was silenced. My son was not allowed to speak. My son had to be escorted on campus by a police officer, while everybody else, even the kids that used their real names, they were able to roam around campus free. They didn't need an escort.
I remember I think we have a picture of that to show that Stevie, literally you said, had to park his car away from the university, and he couldn't even park on campus because of the death threats.
That's right. The university they could not say that his car would not be tampered with. And they did not want to have that responsibility. So we do not live that close to Belmont. So we had to make sure that Stevie had somewhere to park his car, and he did. And then someone had to pick him up and drive him, the 3 blocks to school because he couldn't be walking around. It was crazy. It was absolutely insanity. There was nobody that reached out to us to say, hey, how's he doing? Mentally grueling on a student, I think, at the age of 20, who is student body president. No one ever called. No one checked in with us. No one did anything. They ignored it. Then every detail that we have that is in the book Outcast, every detail we documented, Stevie gave to Belmont University. He gave to all the right parties. No one did a thing. To this day, no one has said a word.
Gloria, do you think it's because they are aligned with what this left radical group did to Stevie, or do you think they're afraid, or do you think it's a mixture of both?
I think it's a combination of both. Now, Belmont University did endorse Black Lives Matters. They did. In August of 2020, they endorsed Black Lives Matters, which is, as a Christian, as a mother, it's stunning to me that they would do that. His fraternity also endorsed Black Lives Matters. The only one who did not endorse it personally or through his position as student body president, but once again, it's not a political position. But Stevie is the only one in that campus that did not endorse it. Everyone else did.
Wow. That's so sad to me. And it just is very concerning when you think about being a Christian. We know about the book of Revelation. We know what's coming. And to see people take a knee and just fold like a deck of cards with this is just super concerning to me, and really scary, actually, to think that Stevie was the only one. Stevie, could you tell us about the standards board meeting for your fraternity that you had and you were required to attend? You explain in your mom's book, Outcast, that there was a meeting that you had to go to that would normally be reserved for members who had broken fraternity rules of law. Can you expound on that?
Yes, and so first I'd like to say that Tennessee is a great state for many reasons, but one of the biggest is because you're allowed to record a conversation without any other parties knowing you're doing it. And so fortunately, I was able to record this standards meeting, which we have the transcription in my mother's book. But what it details is how I was referred to by standards, which is the judiciary group of our fraternity. And like you said, it's usually reserved for people that break the law or do things that make the fraternity look bad, things of that nature. Well, because I refused to endorse the Black Lives Matter organization, and because I refused to apologize for being a proud American, I was told by my big brother in the fraternity, who is also the chair of this committee, he told me that if I did not endorse BLM, if I did not apologize for what I had said and bend the knee and do what these people were telling me to do, I was going to be removed from the fraternity. And so I was referred, like he had said I was going to be, and I had to sit in this meeting where I was being berated for being a proud American and being told that America is a systemically evil and racist country from my own fraternity brothers, the same fraternity brothers who I had played board games with, who we had gone to fraternity formals and semi-formals with, and done all these things together, who were my friends, who knew what I stood for. And before the summer of 2020, they were okay with me being a Republican and for supporting Donald Trump. Well, unfortunately, during that Zoom call, it was made very clear that if I did not do these things they were demanding of me, they were going to destroy my reputation on Belmont and on Belmont's campus, and they were going to try to follow me, after I had graduated, and let people know that I was a terrible, racist, evil person because I love this country, and I wouldn't apologize for saying that to them or to anyone else.
Wow, that's just astounding to me. What did that feel like to have them turn on you? You must have felt so betrayed.
I did. It was the hardest experience of my life. I was elected with 97 or 98% of the vote when I ran for student body president at Belmont. I had many, many friends, or people I thought were friends at least, until that summer. But the feelings of, being alone and standing up for what I believe in, I would never change what I did. But it was very, very, very difficult. One of the worst experience I can think of with this whole ordeal was there was a student who went to Belmont, a female student, and she was in the college Democrats at Belmont University. And she happened to work at a fast food establishment that I would go to every morning. I may be from Chicago, but I love my Tacova boots and I love sweet tea. And I can't live without the sweet tea. It's very important to me. It's instead of coffee, that's what it is. But I would go and get this every morning. And this student admitted in a group text, in the college Democrat official group text, that she had been putting, quote, gross stuff in my drinks, and was proud of it because I was a terrible Republican and I didn't support BLM. So she admitted to committing battery just because I disagreed with her politically.
Wow, that is unbelievable. And you can see why people in these situations are getting scared, because this is real. All the more reason to draw close to the Lord and really pray and be led of the Holy Spirit as to even where we're going to eat and things of that nature. Gloria, you share in your book that Edmund Burke said the one thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. What message would you like to share with other parents and students?
Well, I'd like for parents to know that just because our children are 18 and they go to college does not mean that they are completely grown up and we no longer are important in their lives. And we need to play a critical role, despite the fact that they may go away to college, despite the fact it may be, in a different state, it may be at a different end of a country. Parents need to be there for their child. The lines of communication need to stay open. Children need to know that they are still children. And we do need to have them understand that the family traditions that we instilled in them are still there. We can't let the left take them. And that's what I see happening more and more. And it's every university. The left has a great way of messaging and branding and glamorizing, and we don't offer that. But we need to start. We need to stay in touch with our children all the time, because the university is not there to make sure that children will grow up and maintain the values that we have instilled in them. They are there. Teachers, I hate to say this, but it's true. Teachers are no longer teaching. They are only imposing their beliefs on our students at colleges. And that is so frightening for conservative parents, because we don't have anybody at universities who's standing up for us. We don't have teachers who are saying, well, this is what I want to teach you. No, this is how things are. I mean, they're rewriting the news, just like in communist countries. When you watch the television news, it is not reporting that's accurate. It is reporting that the government wants you to hear. Just like you mentioned the manifesto. Yes, that happened here in Nashville, and we know the police officer involved. And it is amazing how that has been kept so quiet for so long, and it's not right. Everything going on in this country right now has us about 2 steps away from communism, from where I see it, living in a communist country. The police officers, thankfully, they are still on our side, we feel. Thankfully, we can still go to them if something happens. But there will come a time when the government will take that over. And unfortunately, if we don't act now, we're not going to be able to change it ever. We need to keep our children safe on campuses. We need to keep our children safe at every grade level, from, preschool, from every level, or we need to homeschool them. But history is being rewritten as you and I speak. And we need to put a stop to that.
Well, I think it's amazing that you started an organization. If you could touch on this, the United Women Foundation. A lot of parents could be stressed and scared and just kind of sit back, but you actually chose to do something and be an advocate. Can you talk about that for a few minutes?
Sure. I do find that the left is targeting our female population much more so than our male. So I started a 501c3 nonprofit. It's called United Women Foundation. It was originally called United Women of Tennessee. What we do is we mentor, we find internships, and we employ young women with conservatives. We also offer college scholarships for young women. We're looking to do $150,000 of scholarship next year. So we are here for, it's free to join. We are here for women of all ages who are conservatives, who want to join us on our Zoom meetings, which we have every second Tuesday of the month. And we also will help you find a job. We will help guide you. If you are someone who feels your voice has not been heard and is not able to be heard anywhere, we are here for you. So it's UnitedWomenFoundation.com. And if you have a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece, someone you know who's in school, who is looking for a scholarship, we would like to hear from them. We would like to know what they are doing now to be a conservative and what they will be doing in the future to be a conservative. That's what the scholarship is based on. And I'm very excited. We also send our young women to conservative events. We'll be sending some to a Turning Point event in Arizona. And it's interesting. I work with amazing young women, amazing, and I can always use the help of women who are older as well to mentor and to show our young women that the right side is with us.
That's great. I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for what you're doing to help push back against this narrative and to stand for truth and to train up the children, the students, and teach them how to pursue truth. And I'm just so grateful that you did that. Where can folks find your book, Outcast?
It's all over. It's available on Amazon, basically. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, but I have been labeled a radical myself. Evidently, they will not carry my book in their store because you can go in and order it from them, but it has to be delivered to your home because I'm a radical. They don't have a shelf for that, evidently. But Amazon,
you're
available.
You're a radical. You're a radical for speaking the truth, I guess, and not, speaking the current narrative.
That's exactly true. If you tell the truth, you are a radical, which is so frightening on every level, and you know that.
Yes. Well, thank you, Gloria and Stevie, so much for joining me today on the Counter Narrative. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we are going to discuss the low percentage of Americans continuing to follow the COVID injection narrative. And we'll learn that the CDC and Big Pharma may do to continue to inject gene therapy into the human population. We will talk with Matthew Dark, who has experience with interviewing guests, research, and patient care after this.
Now I'm on the right side.
Banks are supposed to be the safest placeholders for cash in the world, but in 2022 that changed. The Federal Reserve pulled out $2.5 trillion of liquidity out of the banks, and the Fed also changed the requirements so banks don't need to keep any funds on hand. This means banks are starved for liquidity and have now become very dangerous places to hold your assets. Get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 720-605-3900.
My employees and I are excited to announce it's our 20th anniversary, and to celebrate, we're bringing you a limited edition MyPillow. The Giza Elegance MyPillow is made with the most amazing cotton, 2-inch pipe gusset, comes in 4 custom loft levels, and it's machine washable and dryable.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. That's why we've been around for 20 years, because MyPillow works.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your limited edition 20th anniversary MyPillow queen size. Retails for $69.98, now only $19.98. That's right, only $19.98.
With my 60-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Sleep well, America!
Now I'm on the right side.
Welcome back to the Counter Narrative. My next guest found that in the midst of global upheaval, he was called to start a powerful radio show in Denver, Colorado called The Matthew Dark Show. Born out of the pandemic that swept across the world in March of 2020, this radio program has become a beacon of truth and hope. Along with speaking truth and exposing darkness, Matthew and his wife operate a natural healthcare practice along with a nonprofit organization called Colorado Healthcare Providers for Freedom that is committed to preserving the sacred patient-provider relationship. Hi, Matthew. Thank you for joining me today on the Counter Narrative.
Thank you so much, Miriam. So good to be here. Such valuable work you're doing, so we thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much. Please share with us a bit more about who you are and what you do.
Well, we were waltzing around in our own private world with a medical practice that served hormones, thyroid, gut health. COVID showed up and you could just smell something wasn't right with it. And so God bless my wife, who was in front of COVID and the research and all the fallacies that began to spill out immediately. And all of a sudden, God called us to get involved in the health freedom movement, and it's changed our lives. I mean, we're having this conversation because of COVID. And so because COVID was it affected every person out there, people were called to do things that they normally wouldn't have thought of. And that's how we found ourselves now called to serve as a nonprofit, serve as a voice for those who didn't have any. And then the biggest thing was medical transparency and honesty. I mean, so many people's doctors failed them. This was the biggest healthcare event of their life, and their doctors failed them. They recommended treatment that was going to harm them. We know the hospital protocols were so deadly. And so we were losing people, and we were losing trust in the medical system, and healthcare providers in Colorado, they rallied around each other, and we formed Colorado Healthcare Providers for Freedom. And pleased to say now we are leading lawsuits all over this country in pursuit of those who were fired through no fault of their own, but they were told to take a vaccine that we now know is dangerous to the human body, ineffective against COVID. It was designed that way. I can't advise anybody stronger against the COVID-19 shots. Please don't do them. Consult with anybody prior to doing that. But we found that there was something going on and it needed to be investigated. And so we got a show out of the deal. We got advocacy out of the deal. And we've been able to communicate with patients on a level that we didn't do before. Don't mention vaccines. They're just do them and don't ask any questions. And what we found is that the rate of autism in 1980 was 1 in 10,000. It's 1 in 34 today. That's not a coincidence, folks. The childhood schedule going back all the way to 1986 with the Reagan bill, there was 11 shots on that schedule. Today, there's anywhere as much as 79 if you're going all in on everything. And that's just a breathtaking number. And until we say no, question those who are administering, we're going to continue to have more and more hurt children, heartbroken parents, and a lack of compassion for human lives. So we're thrilled to be called to serve in a very critical battle right now. I mean, we're 1 year away from elections, and there's so much on the line. So we're thrilled to be a part of it.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and to your wife for standing for truth. I know that that's not easy. You come across a lot of resistance and attacks. I'm personally curious how you started a radio show. I don't know anybody else who came out on the other side of COVID doing a radio show. So tell us about that.
Well, it's always been my dream I wanted to be a sports announcer, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in and welcome aboard. I thought that was my calling. And then this one day during COVID, this gentleman on the East Coast had a little radio station in St. Simons Island, Georgia. And he said, I need a place to send my listeners for ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. They need relief for COVID. And so I said, listeners, what do you mean listeners? I always want to be on the radio, I think now. And so one conversation later, we were doing Saturdays at noon. It was a tape show for an hour, and it blossomed into something that was regular here in Denver. And then we want to move this show out to back to that same station for distribution. But that's what I'm talking about. Everybody's got this super special gift inside of them, and it's going to be different for everybody. And God's tapping on your heart right now. This is that moment we need that gift. Everybody who wants to preserve that American way of life that we've come so accustomed to, what we thought, this is that moment. Get inconvenienced. Step up to the plate where you can be of service, because everybody's got a gift right now, and this is that moment. We don't know what we're called for, but just be ready to serve, because it's there's a lot about to hit the fan, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we all are called, and the word is very clear to be strong and courageous. And no matter what our part is in the body of Christ, it takes all of us. And when you think about even back in the day with our forefathers, some were pastors. I remember one story of a pastor who had his military uniform on underneath his robe and literally preached a sermon and then took off his robe and went out to war. And we need that level of commitment today, whether you're a mom, a dad, a child, or a grandparent. There is something that God has called us to do. And I love that when this all came down the pike, that you and your wife stood for truth and resisted and are really trying to speak the truth. There was one truth that you shared with me recently that I found incredibly disturbing, and you called it the PrEP Act. What is that, and what are the recent changes that have been made?
Okay, so this is very important that the listener understand, the viewer understand, that the PrEP Act surrounds our emergency use of medicines. And you can see if you go to the HHS, that's the Health and Human Services, Javier Secretary Becerra is the one that is issuing or making available to us emergency use medicines or pieces of medical research, which is what the COVID shots are. People, we have to understand that every single COVID shot out there in the circulation is under this emergency use authorization. Second point, every single COVID shot is owned by the United States government. The Department of Defense owns every single shot. Most people don't understand that. So when you think about you are taking government medicine that they have now then afforded themselves complete and pure immunity from any liability, here's the breathtaking part. They've added the influenza vaccine to the same emergency protocols that the COVID shot finds itself out. So what does it do for you? Well, they're not disclosing ingredients. They're not disclosing efficacy. They're not disclosing branding or anything. They are using old, reformulated, or failed flu vaccines, but because now they have reclassified them as emergency use, nobody's asking questions. Nobody's looking under the hood. So now we have unsuccessful, and most people don't understand, the flu vaccine is on its best day 30% effective. Okay, that's their published paper. So if it does everything they anticipate, you have still a 70% chance of getting influenza. We used to consume in 1980 12 million doses of influenza vaccine. In 2020, 194 million doses of influenza vaccine consumed in the United States. This is a breathtaking number, and now we're adding it without any research, without any data, study otherwise, with combination of the COVID shot and the influenza vaccine, and they've paired them together, both under the PrEP Act. What's even more shocking, I call pharmacies all the time, spoke to several this week. Shaquille O'Neal, 7 foot, 300-pound man, and a 6-month-old baby would receive the exact same amount of flu vaccine and COVID vaccine if they were to go to Walgreens tomorrow and say, we're here to get up to date on our vaccines. That is breathtaking. That is shocking, but it doesn't matter because we've placed it all under the PrEP Act. And unless you say no and you ask questions, you have no further ability to, if something goes wrong. And we know that they're not monitoring safety standards on any of this stuff. Why? They don't have to. And so people need to understand RSV now is being recommended for seniors. Walgreens is calling on their intercom. Head back to the pharmacy now for $9.99. Seniors, you can get your RSV. We've never had seniors getting RSV. We've never had seniors getting vaccinated for RSV. That's for babies. My wife heard that. She about fainted because she's never heard of that in all of her time as a healthcare provider, that we're vaccinating seniors for RSV or that our seniors are having We've changed the rules. We've accepted microwave medicines. We're putting stuff in there with no testing. Stuff that used to take 10 years, Miriam, in testing. And if there was any injury at all, if there was any side effect at all, pull that product. We've thrown that out the window, and Americans are just saying, I'm sure they've got it taken care of, but they don't have it taken care of. VAERS, openvaers.com is sort of that vaccine injury reporting system. I encourage the listener to get. There's nothing like the COVID shot. It's on there. And so coming now then, what do they want to do? They want to include the influenza, more RNA. mRNA is coming down the pipeline. I mean, that's such a misused term. If the viewer would go and look at Tom Renz's new book, Mod RNA, Why It Matters, it's a full essay disclosure on what's going on and this design to bring mRNA through our vaccines, through our food sources, through our air, through our water. It's disclosing it all. Messenger RNA, folks, is not the same thing as mod RNA. It is a synthetic thing that is not leaving the body, that has been misrepresented to the American people over and over again. It is time we wise up. We have to wake up. We have to ask questions. And if it doesn't feel right, Miriam, we've got to just say, you know what? No. I'll pass, and we move right on with our lives. So it's a breathtaking medical environment. We've never seen anything like it, and it needs everyone on board with some resistance.
Well, as a former pharmaceutical rep, I remember selling antibiotics, and I remember selling new antibiotics. And there was quite a large sector of physicians that we labeled them the wait and see doctors, because they didn't want to and these were fully approved antibiotics that had gone through the quote unquote rigorous safety testing, probably had been, being worked on for like that 10-year mark, as you suggested. Mm-hmm. And even then, back in the early 2000s, physicians didn't necessarily want to jump on board. And it was really a small sector of physicians who were willing to jump on board with an FDA-approved antibiotic. So first, I want to point that out. And then secondly, I want to point out the fact that both of them got pulled off the market because it killed people. They both killed people. And so, but it was an amazing response. They quickly pulled these off the market. And so as a former pharmaceutical rep, I'm watching everything go down with these COVID injections and now the flu shot. And it's just so ironic and odd to me that these doctors are almost like robots, just taking orders and just prescribing as they are instructed, because it's really the antithesis of the way they used to practice medicine.
I can't imagine volunteering so many people just out and for sacrifice. I mean, this is human sacrifice. Let's not be cute about it. But for these doctors to recommend something that they couldn't possibly know, and this new booster that's out there in circulation, coupled with the flu vaccine, to say that, I mean, a pharmacist just today told me there's absolutely no interaction. It doesn't interact. And I said, how could you possibly know that? I mean, this just came out a month ago, and we know we're having reports of people having reaction to that, because why? It's never been done before. And so we're allowing experimentation done to ourselves. And all of a sudden, it just sort of happened all of a sudden. And that's what we have to steer that ship back to. We're going to err on the side of safety, patient first. Let's wait and see. And more evidence of effective treatment like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, other herbals, Chinese woodworm, all these different early therapeutics that were so successful that we know reduce mortality. Those were suppressed. We've boosted up, no offense, boosters that are unproven, dangerous to people. It's flip-flopped. And the only way it stops is people say, no, you can't have my money. I mean, they're selling these things for $20 a crack. You just simply don't purchase that product and they'll go out of business. I mean, we have to start thinking about this and fear not, reliance on the Lord, that you've been given this immune system that it doesn't come more perfect than it's given to us. It's us deteriorating it with vaccines and toxins and mercury and aluminum and all this stuff that we just say, yeah, I guess Diet Cokes are fine. 20 years later, we find out that's cancer. Sunscreen, that's cancer. No big deal. But I lost my dad, no, there's consequences for just blindly just saying, I'm sure they have our best interest. They don't. We follow the money. We know that there's a financial gain in keeping us sick, keeping us medicated, and then keeping us, quite frankly, dependent and dumb on this big pharma machine that is, they're wounded right now. You feel like they're wounded right now because they had such a boom and they were flooded with cash. Pfizer never had so much cash, $100 billion in revenue in 2021. And that's evaporating. You mentioned the stats top of your show. Nobody wants COVID shots. Even these hardcore liberals, they are not participating in the schedule as much as they want to shame you and I for, being conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat stuff. They also are choosing not to vaccinate because the stats say they're not going in and doing that. So the game's up, but it doesn't mean that they're not coming back. They just right now, mRNA COVID shots have a very bad reputation, but the flu vaccine we just referenced, 194 million doses in 2020, they still believe they have a favorable likeness about the influenza vaccine. They can still convince a senior to do it. And by the way, that senior gets everything plus another one. They are loading seniors up like never before. So we're asking questions, we're noticing things, and we're saying we've had enough of this. And by the way, what we're not talking about is there's so much chaos going on. We really don't get enough time on each chaotic event because look around and it is, wow, what is going on?
So I have a question. I want to go back to this flu shot concept. So this addition to the PrEP Act, this happened last April. I did not hear about it. I heard about it from you literally just a few weeks ago. So I think that is alarming that it just kind of snuck in under the radar. Nobody's talking about it, number one. Number two, I wanted to ask you, so are you suggesting, and is it an option now that it's in this PrEP Act, can the flu shot and the ingredients be altered now with new technology? Is that what you're suggesting, that possibly they could inject this mRNA technology into the flu shots because they don't have to disclose the ingredients now?
That's absolutely their goal. And if you go to Pfizer's website, they are eagerly and very celebratory talking about the idea of a flu mRNA vaccine. So there's no doubt that it is in testing and it is their desire. What we mentioned is that mRNA is already in all U.S. pork. If you reference that book, Tom Renz's Mod RNA, Why It Matters, you will find that the U.S. pork, and they're moving to beef and chicken and you name it, is already containing mRNA vaccines. Now, that's in our U.S. pork. What they've also introduced, of course, is on the COVID side, and now as a means to get the mRNA fully converted on the childhood schedule. That is where they're moving. That is their desires, and that's them publishing that of what a benefit that would be to society. So as it stands right now, if you go to a pharmacy, you absolutely have to ask for a data fact sheet. I did it this week. They didn't have it. I was not interested in it, but I said, what do I do if we're concerned about ingredients? And she printed me off this like one-page document that basically said if I was to have a reaction, call these numbers, and that I might faint, and I might have swelling, and I might have this, and that they did mention there was some vaccine compensation program. But I had to ask for it. She went back and printed it, and you could feel there was some tension behind the counter when I was asking for this because nobody's asking for this stuff. So you absolutely have to ask them. They're not advertising what brand it is of flu vaccine or anything like that because a lot of these, what they're doing, because again, now under the Emergency PrEP Act, they are taking old failed influenza vaccines that would have not worked in years past, but now can clear that hurdle in an emergency capacity. That is what's happening right now. And so if you ask your pharmacist to tell you what are my options for the flu vaccine, they'll tell you, and then you need to ask for those ingredients in that data fact sheet. And they just have to supply that to you to satisfy informed consent. And that's what you have to do as a patient. I've heard the risk, I've heard the benefit, and I've heard the alternative, and I've made my decision X, Y, Z. That's not going on at pharmacies right now. And they're not disclosing what's going on inside of the product they're giving you. And so you have to ask all questions. And if they can't supply that, it should raise alarms. All people should be concerned that the pharmacist injecting you with this stuff can't tell you what it is, what's in it, and what's a safe level of it. And how is a 6-month-old supposed to get the same amount as this 300-pound man? How is that possible? They have to be able to answer those questions going forward. And guess what? Under the Emergency or PrEP Act, where it actually begins to benefit the public, and they don't advertise this either, but every person has the right to refuse experimental medicines. And that's explicit. Congress prescribed that 50 years ago. Okay, so that you couldn't abuse humans in experimentation, but you have to exercise that right. I spoke with a gentleman just this week. He is very concerned about the promotion he is going to get is contingent upon his vaccination status. Okay, well, guess what? Congress has already prescribed that he cannot be discriminated against. Okay, because he's exercising his right to refuse. People must be armed with that knowledge. And once you are, you're almost, and I don't want to say this that way, because these institutions, they do need to pay for what they do, but you're almost hoping then for a discriminatory act at that point, because right now is where you broke the law. You cannot discriminate me because I do not want to participate in medical research, and that's what the PrEP is all about. It's all about protecting those administering medical research. The problem is you can't punish me if I choose to say no. So flu vaccines absolutely will be in an mRNA capacity imminently. I mean, we're not going to know the exact day. It's happening, though, that they're advertising it. They've set the legal infrastructure. The testing is all right there, and they've already convinced us all that this is the way to go. The problem is it's not working on COVID, so they're doing some rebranding, some renaming. One way or another, this sick mentality of we've got to vaccinate Americans to the hill, it's not stopping until we say no more. And so that's why when you start asking the really tough questions like what's in it, how much of this is safe, and did you take it? And may I see the ingredients? And until they start answering those questions, I just think all bets are off. You can't just blindly trust pharmaceuticals in this hostile of an environment. And I just encourage people to be strong and know their rights in this law.
Thank you for explaining that, Matthew, and thank you for going to these pharmacies and asking these tough questions. I can only imagine how uncomfortable they are when you ask them this. Could you please describe this double jab concept and where you're hearing about it?
So, well, this is the thing. I mean, this is what they're absolutely proud of. Okay, you've seen, of course, the Travis Kelce, the Taylor Swift. I mean, this is truly demonic. This idea of just do the double jab. It's no big deal. This article that references this a great Substack article, the Toronto mayor. Now, I think people need to understand. Step back for a second here. The new mayor of Toronto is a Chinese woman with a thick Chinese accent, telling her people, get the double jab, no problem, do the double jab. And she knows nothing on safety. There's absolutely no study that this current booster is doing anything to prevent anything. In fact, we know it. The Cleveland Clinic study, December 2022, 50,000 healthcare workers, it proved clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the more vaccines you took, the more COVID you got. The worse the outcome and the more frequent that infection. That's done. This new vaccine has actually no study that says it does anything. We are literally just putting this stuff in randomly just to check a box off. I mean, it's the craziest trance I've ever seen Americans slip into. I can't think of anything. I mean, we have our climate enthusiasts and so, but this COVID one, I mean, you're playing with fire here. You don't know that if you get a real COVID shot. Now, when I say real one, the ones that are intended to do what they were designed to do, hurt people, there is no proof that you get to your car, you get home after taking one of those. Some people are getting saline water and it's doing nothing for them. The bottom line is nobody checking, nobody cares, nobody needs COVID or influenza vaccines in America right now. We have to stop and resist, or they're just, they're adding RSV to seniors. It's like, holy cow, what else can we put these poor seniors through? And that tells me at 65, they maybe don't want those folks around as long as maybe the 100 years they were designed to live. Maybe 65 is pushing it in our government's eyes. And so we have to advise our seniors that this is a different ballgame than maybe you were used to, that you grew up in. There is a different animal running United States healthcare, and nobody seems to really be concerned that it's gone that far, that quick, with safety being sacrificed almost, to nothing. So it's breathtaking.
It's just so astounding to me. I did talk about this at the top of the show about the $2 billion that Pfizer and Moderna have lost. And when you just take a step back and you look at this system, it's a system. Dr. Peter McCullough calls it a biopharmaceutical complex. But when you take a step back and you look at it, the marketing that's going behind this, it's just astounding to me that they have a term called the double jab. It almost sounds like a dance or a name of something almost fun, but they've had to come up with this name to just get people even thinking about getting another COVID injection, because Biden already determined that we do not have a health emergency anymore. So he said that a long time ago. So why on earth do we need to do this? And when human trust, American trust has dropped to 7%, I'm thrilled to see that, but yet this tyrannical move, this nefarious move on the other side to push this agenda is just so alarming to me, and really confirms my deep suspicions that they really want to inject something in us, and they're not even disclosing. Dr. McCullough was on the Moms on a Mission podcast recently, and he said after 3 years, he went over to the European Parliament and he implored them to please take these off the market. We still do not have a package insert. We still do not have labeling with these COVID injections 3 years later. It's unacceptable. It just makes you think that they're wanting to inject us with something that they don't want us to know about. I mean, what other conclusion could you draw from this?
You can't. And there's two kinds of people right now. The ones that know and believe in their hearts we're in the beginning phases of the Great Reset, and the other people that are in the denial of the existence of the Great Reset. And so if you believe in the Great Reset, COVID was a part of it. They needed to manufacture a lab-made, man-made, and we know it was made in North Carolina, then shipped over to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. You had to have that element embedded in the human race before you could tell them the vaccine was on its way. One of my biggest criticisms of President Trump is he took the bait on we can make you the savior of the world, Operation Warp Speed. I do not believe for a day that Trump is behind any plan to wipe out mankind, but they took advantage of his big ego, and they warp speeded us right into emergency medicines that by their patent, by their design, and I encourage Dr. Brian Ardis, if anybody has ever done his stuff on the actual components, the chemistry of the spike protein and what is going on in there, and it's why you have the clotting. It was designed to hurt people. It was gain of function. It was Dr. Fauci was doing this stuff, and he knew he was busted. And so that is what's going on. And whether you want to be in denial of this happening to you, I understand this is not pleasant thoughts to have. It's not. To think that, holy cow, I would have never thought of this. I have 7 small children, 6 and 7. I would have never thought about things like this as a child. I think I'm going to play pro football, buy a house, and do all these things and have a great. Now you're sitting here thinking, holy cow, you've had the southern border destroyed. You've had World War started. You've had a health pandemic that we haven't even seen the effect of the turbo cancers and the long-term erosion of our immune systems. Remember, we're only 2.5, 3 years into the vaccine campaign. And so you go out 3, 5, 10 years and you really start to shorten the human life by what you've poisoned them with. And you have to believe that's going on because there's enough evidence for even a blind person, Helen Keller, Stephen Wonder, all of our famous blind people can see that this was an attack against Joe Blow and the average person, that there was in their way. And so the root of it is climate change. The root of it is climate change because depopulation is a tough thing to sell to people, but you can sell, hey, we got to be careful with the planet. We're all over the planet. But the root of that thing is global takeover, where we need, a certain amount of people and they will serve the better. So that is happening right now, and they're using the COVID shot. So that's why I say, especially Christian conservative folks, you got to say no. You do not need their medicines, and know that their medicines, their core is to hurt you. And so I feel like we're having breakthrough all the time. The stats prove it. People don't want this stuff anymore.
Yeah, I'm super grateful that number was 7% and not 57%. And I believe it's because people are standing up and they're talking about it. They're starting podcasts, they're starting radio shows, and they are speaking the truth in love and documenting. The data is on our side. The data is there. The left does not want to use data because the data exposes them. So I quickly wanted you to share about your the Colorado Healthcare Providers for Freedom. What is the website again? And then can you explain why people would go to this website? I know I heard you talk about attorneys and things of that nature. So when would someone reach out to your organization?
So preservation of health freedom, one of the things that we're tackling right now is, of course, the idea of those that were fired from the healthcare system. And then you were all of a sudden fired from your job when you were asked not to participate in vaccination. We are advocating for those, raising money for those people all across the country. If you go to coloradomedicalfreedom.com, you can view all the lawsuits that are going on right now under these right to refuse lawsuits. You can donate, and you very well may have a case too that you need representation for. You would get in contact with coloradomedicalfreedom.com, and then everybody would be able to connect you with a lawyer in your area, or maybe you have a cause dear to you and you want to do something donation-wise. So we just encourage you to take it out and you get full education.
And then I just also wanted everybody to know where to find your show. Matthew Dark Show is on Rumble and all the streaming platforms, right?
The MatthewDarkShow.com will take you everywhere you need to be.
Well, everybody, let's follow him. Let's go to Rumble and let's listen. He knows so much about this and his wife. So thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us today. I so appreciate you being on the Counter Narrative and sharing your truth. You've done so much research with your wife and you're standing for truth. And I just so appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Great job, Miriam. God bless everybody.
God bless. And thank you for being on the Counter Narrative. Okay, well, we're going to have a quick break and I will be right back.
Now I'm on the right side.
Get more out of your AMP News experience with AMP Insider. With 7 pillars of focused information, including wealth strategies. Find comprehensive videos on understanding precious metals and start building wealth the right way. Support the mission of AMP with a subscription for $9.95 per month. Get the first month for $1 by using promo code AMP888.
Welcome to a new era of connecting patriots. AMP Insider.
right side.
I want to close out with a scripture today. It's so important with the confusion, chaos, and deceit circling around us that we keep the word, the only truth, continually in our hearts. It is the lens through which we evaluate everything. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Thanks so much for watching. You can learn more about me and our Moms on a Mission podcast at momsonamission.net, where our 3 pillars are to educate, awake, and activate others to help save our country. And I'd be so honored if you followed our Moms on a Mission podcast on Rumble or on any other platforms. It has been such a joy to fill in for Kristi today. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to share the counter narrative.
I'm on the right side.
In light of recent bank volatility and skyrocketing inflation, diversification is a must. That's why I use my good friend Andrew Sorcini at Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Beverly Hills Precious Metals makes it so easy to diversify. I personally ordered some silver and it arrived on my doorstep just a few days later. They make it so easy. And if you're not ready to do that and you just want to ask a few questions, they're there for you too. I personally got some silver and also am rolling over some of my IRA. You can actually roll over your IRA and have it be backed by silver and gold. So if you don't have any extra money to invest in silver and gold, rolling over a 401k or an IRA, or even part of it, if you just want to try it at first, just for a little bit, you can do that as well. So go to bh-pm.com today and ask all your questions. You can connect with somebody. And like I said, you can just get some information at first if you want and pray about it, and then get back with them to roll over part of your IRA or all of it, or order some gold and silver. That's bh-pm.com. and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hey, everybody. Did you know that recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed? Parasites are actually the cause of many health problems such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health. Moms on a Mission encourages you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all natural detoxification and fights inflammation. And the supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively. I know after I took Full Moon Protocol, I had more energy. To order your Full Moon Protocol today, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. According to leading sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle getting a good night's rest. That's why Moms on a Mission loves MyPillow. MyPillow makes amazing pillows, sheets, mattress toppers, robes, towels, literally almost everything you need for a good night's sleep. They also make dog beds for your dogs. So by going to mypillow.com, typing in the code MISSION, you not only receive a high quality product, but you're supporting Moms on a Mission and this podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you agree with it, you believe in it, and you want to support Moms on a Mission, then go to mypillow.com today and order some high quality products, and just type in the code MISSION at checkout and you can save up to 66% off. That's mypillow.com, code MISSION.
Since 2014, Organic Body Essentials has offered clean, simple, certified organic skincare. Our organic face-to-feet and federally compliant hemp and pet products are manufactured under USDA and FDA guidelines. Our products are inspired by God using plants He created. In Ezekiel 47:12, it says, "The fruit is for food and the leaves for healing." We believe in the power of God to heal, so we pray over our products and for our customers. Our therapy in a bottle approach has been widely received, and our customers' testimonials continue to inspire us. You can find us at organicbodyessentials.com and obe.organicbodyessentials.com. Please feel welcome to reach out with questions. Use coupon code MISSION at checkout for a discount. Thank you for your support by using Mission at checkout to benefit moms on a mission and their quest to reestablish traditional values in our education system and empowerment for a healthy lifestyle.